Hey pilots, Drain Man here, and today I got a very special video. In today's video, we are continuing on with the How to Build a Monster Drone playlist. We have already spent some time going over all of our parts, figuring out what do we need to get this thing built. And if you're going to build a X-Class or monster drone with me, you were able to find out what parts you need and what you're going to need in order to get your quad up and running and get this monster in the sky. So if you didn't see that video, make sure you go down to the video description. I'll put a link to that video. Go ahead and click that and start back there so that you can enjoy the whole ride. Now, if you're not building a drone with me, you are just enjoying the show and staying along for the ride, then I want you to tuck your arms and feet inside of the drone at all times and let's go. So in order to mount these motors, you've got to get them on, and the wires will actually pass through here because this will protect your wires during a crash, and you don't have to run it that way. That is going to cause these wires to run on the inside of this tube, and you do not have to do that. You can run them just like this on the top, and then you can zip tie them down. You can double side sticky tape, you can electrical tape, you can run them however you want. You can wrap them around the bottom. You can even do a wrap-de-wrap all the way around. Oh, that wasn't good. All right, I did drop this motor and it took the hit very well. So test one was successful. I'm gonna set that over there so that doesn't happen again. So you have different mounting options when you're mounting your motors. I have chosen to take my wires and we are gonna feed them inside of here. And then the motor is going to mount like this. The wires will curl around like that and get sent back up on the inside of this arm. This is just a hollow carbon fiber arm, and I would rather my wires be protected rather than exposed if I have a choice. These are the Racing Power 4715 360 kV motors. So they did come with M4 screws to mount it, and they gave me two options. One that was too short and one that was way too long. So I was not able to mount the motors. My only option would have been to thread it in, and I would have only had about 2 threads holding this motor. And with the amount of thrust that we are going to have from these motors, that's the last thing I want to do is cut it short on the amount of grab that we have from our screws onto our motor. So that is why I ran up to the store and I purchased these. They are a little bit longer and they are still M4, and they're going to allow the motor to seat correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in now. Now this is not something you want to play with. This is going to be a very important part. If your screws are loose or they are not held on very strong, you could pop a motor while flying. So I find it important to take the extra step, which is very time consuming, but I'm going to put Loctite, and this is blue. If you've watched any of my build videos, we use Loctite. Do not use the red one because you probably won't get your screw back. So use the blue, and you're going to put a little dab on the threads, and then you're going to slide it in. Now to prevent from getting it all over the carbon, I'm going to put it through first. And then I'm going to put a little dab on the threads. You don't need a lot. And after you get it through, put your motor there and thread it in. And I wouldn't go too tight till you get the rest of them. Alright, and now we're going to do another one. And no, I'm not going to make you watch me put on 4 motors. We're going to just learn how to put on one together, and then I'll put the other 4 on off camera. Do not strip these out. Yes, you want them tight, but don't be obnoxious and strip anything. These are actually stainless steel, which I would have preferred regular steel because they would have been stronger, but they just didn't have it. And the Loctite is going to help us and ensure that with all the vibration, they don't come unscrewed. Something else to keep in mind if you build one of these, or if you plan to own one of these, you need to do pre-flight checks. You can't just power it up and go like we do with the mini quads. This is a different animal. All right, now that I've got all 4 in, it's looking good. I'm gonna lock them nice and tight. All right, and then I doubt you'll be able to see inside, but my motor screw length is literally perfect. All right, so that is one motor on, ready to go. I'm gonna do the other 3, and then I'll meet you back here. All right, pilots, we are back. We have our motors. We have them all put on the feet. They're all connected. We use Loctite on all the screws. So now that they're all on and set, we need to go ahead and get our motors put on the frame. But before we do that, I want to do one quick thing because it's going to take time for it to dry. And what that is I want to conformal coat my electronics, my PDB and my 4 ESCs. So now during the process, after I got these done, I went ahead and I did the first coat without you, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna do the second coat with you, so that way you can see how it's done, but you don't spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes watching me freaking paint on a clear liquid. So what I've got here is, I've got just a plate right here, and I went ahead and threw my electronics in here, that way I'm not getting it all over everything. And you might see the shine that we've got, and that's because I've already put on my first coat. And then I went ahead and did it to the PDB too. And if you're doing conformal coating, if you have any boot buttons, if you've got anything like that, you need to be very careful. Any micro USB connections, anything like that, you do not want to conformal coat those. On these electronics here, there is none of that, so I was able to freely paint it. If you are concerned with your pads or you're curious about your pads, do not worry about that. When your iron is 500, 600, 800 degrees, it melts that stuff right off. You don't have to worry about that. Now it's pretty simple. All you're doing is painting. So grab your conformal coat and just paint it on. I want mine to be very thick so I can be sure that I've got good coverage everywhere. Alright, pilots, so the reason we did this step before we mounted our motors is because now I can take this whole plate and I can set it aside, and while this dries, we can put our motors on. Alright, so you need to grab a bottom plate. You're going to need to drop screws in on all of the sides. And what'll make your life easier is to do this part of the brace as well. This part is probably going to get a little difficult, where it would be nice to have more than one hand. And then what we'll do is we'll lay this down without letting the screws fall out. I've chosen to run my wires on the inside of the arm, so that is why I have to do it in this order. Alright, so you see we've dropped the brackets on, we've got our screws popping up, so now what we do is we rest the arm in there. And you need to be in the right spot, which is basically where you're at the tip here. And you want to be pretty much at the tip, but not all the way. And then I need to feed my motor wires through here. And they're going to pop out the other side. And we'll deal with that end when we get there. Right now we're just trying to get our motors mounted. We also need an arm brace, and we are going to lay this across here. Now before we secure that, I need to do this side as well. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to flop this over and I'm going to lock the screws down. Alright, now for the arm brace, you want to equally distribute the difference. Don't have it going to this side more than this side, or this side more than this side. Use your fingers, feel the overhang, and get it to be exact. So there we go. Now we need to put the actual motor on top. Alright, so now you're starting to see what that looks like. So now what I'm going to do is, because if I try to lift this up, it's just going to fall off. So I'm going to slide this to the edge of the table, and I'm going to get under there with a screwdriver, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten those up. After I tighten these down, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the front, and then I'll meet you back here. Alright pilots, we are back and we have our motors on. I mean, look at the size of this thing. I can hardly fit it on the screen. It almost doesn't fit in camera view. It's so freaking huge. I really like these motors here. I waited extra time to get these in. I really do like the color scheme of the pink and the blue. So I am following that. For our ESCs, I printed some little ESC holders, and I went ahead and went with pink to go ahead and match the pink that we got going here. All right, what we need to do now is go ahead and take this off, so that way we can mount the PDB and get it set up. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off. Alright, so that is what the inside looks like. Alright, so the PDB does have an arrow on it. I'm not sure if you can see that, but that arrow needs to face in the direction of forward. And we need to get it raised up off the carbon. We don't want to risk any chance of conductivity between the carbon and the actual PDB. If you, for any reason, have these M3 nuts in metal, because they do come with some of these kits, you'll get the M3 nuts in metal. I'm going to recommend not to use that in a place like this, because if a wire touches, you're going to run electric right through it, and then you're going to be in trouble. So roll with the plastic. Alright, let's go ahead and lock this down. We want it to be very snug. We don't want any movement on our PDB. Also, as well as the PDB doesn't have any PID loop or gyro or anything like that, so there's no need for it to have any type of soft mount or anything like that. Okay, so there you go. She is locked and loaded. I've got a blue mat I'm going to use, so that way I don't mess up my self-healing black mat. I'm going to use the blue mat. Alright, so the next step for these ESCs is to get our capacitors on. And fortunately, these came with the ESCs, so there's no figuring out to do. They've already even bent them for us downward, because they actually sit just like this. So you solder them up, and then they sit across the ESC just like that. So that makes life nice and easy. I like to use ceramic tip tweezers when I can, just because I'm not running continuity, but sometimes you need something bigger and stronger and you don't want to snap your teeth, and that is a good time to use solid metal tweezers. So this guy right here was actually 3D printed, and I'm imagining that this is going to be helpful with trying to get something like this done. And believe it or not, there's a little tiny lip here, and there's also a lip here if you wanted to go in the center. Maybe we ought to go in the center. Yeah, see, because you can actually even slide it in and out if you wanted to. But we're going to bring it to the edge, and then let's give it a snugging. So now it's nice and snug. Now they've kind of made this dummy proof in a way, because they've bent your leads downward, and if I was to try to put positive where negative is, my leads just wouldn't work. So I kind of have to solder it the right way. Alright, so that is what you're looking for. And then it's very important to double check your negative, double check your positive, make sure that you did that correctly. So I'm going to show you what I've got. I've just got a little pumper bottle right here, and it's easy. You just push down and the stuff comes out, and then I can use it and give this a nice cleaning. Now, when you're talking about rubbing alcohol, another best friend is a toothbrush. because it can hit spots that a Q-tip just can't. Alright pilots, we are going to be dumping a ton of amperage into these ESCs. I mean, we are going to be pumping it hard, and these MOSFETs are going to get hot because they're going to be open and closing so fast that they're just bound to get hot. Now I'm sure the way this is designed, it really won't matter, but for me, I want to take the extra step and I want to put heat sinks on my MOSFETs. So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to put 6 heat sinks on this one ESC. Now, we talked about the color scheme. My motors are pink, so for my MOSFET heat sinks, I want to do them in blue. As you'll see here, I've got some right here. These are extremely cheap. I think I paid like $5 or $10 and they sent me like 100 of them. And they're good to have because I can use them on other stuff too. So what I'm going to do is I tried to measure my MOSFETs and I tried to buy them that exact size. And as you can see, I did pretty dang good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount these on the MOSFETs, and what that'll do is that'll help me disperse some of the heat. Now where these are going to be placed, they won't really be subject to getting hit by anything because we're going to have them right up here, right next to the canopy like this. So when this is shut, they're going to be right here. So if we have the heat sink sticking up, it's going to be fine. Now they did come with a little peel off, and you just peel this off and then you stick them on, right? Because they're double-sided sticky. See that? But look, that ain't very strong. They can't even pick up this vise. And if I stick that on, see? You see my point, right? They're not very strong. So I'm going to mount them in a different fashion than they have provided here. So what we do is we just peel this off, and then we're going to mount it with a special adhesive. It's by MG Chemicals, which is the same company that makes the conformal coating that I have. And I really like that conformal coating, so I decided to go with them for this. And what this is a thermally conductive adhesive. So that means that I'll be able to glue this heatsink to this MOSFET, and it will actually conduct the heat through that and into that. There's actually 2 tubes here that are going to dispense the thermally conductive adhesive. We're just going to call it glue. There's 2 different tubes here that are going to dispense the glue, right? So what's going to happen is I'm not going to be able to be precise at all. So I'm going to use this plate here, and I'm going to put some on the plate, which we don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to put some on the plate, and then I'm going to cap this off. And now you can see that there's 2 different colors in there. So I'm going to need to mix those up. And then we only have a short time before it starts to cure, and I'll be able to dip it. That's 1. Two. Now the goal is to get them as straight as possible. Alright pilots, there you are. So we have installed heat sinks on the MOSFETs. It does look wicked. Is this necessary? No, this is not necessary. You do not have to do this. They have designed these ESCs to be able to handle this amount of amperage and stuff like that, but I did do it anyways. I like the way it looks. I think it looks really cool. Plus, I've done everything and more to make sure that these ESCs stay cool. So meanwhile, someone else's ESCs are heating up, Mine will be nice and cool. So while this dries, I'm gonna go ahead and do the other 3, and then I'll meet you back here in the middle. All right, pilots, welcome back. And if you take a look here, you'll see that we have all the ESCs done. We've got our capacitors on. We've got our heat sinks on. Those definitely did take a little bit of time. I had to dip and stick. You saw how it was done. And this stuff is extremely durable. I mean, I tried to I didn't want to be too rough, but I kind of tried to bend them or rip one off, and they did a good job. The thermal paste, the thermally conductive adhesive is actually really good stuff, and I'm very happy with the outcome. I think it looks good. And we're gonna use these ESC mounts that I printed off of line. If you're interested in these, I'll put a link down in the video description. All right, so this is where we're gonna be doing a majority of our work right here. So what we want to do now is we want to take our ESCs, we want to close our canopy, and we're going to imagine setting them right there. So now I've got this special tape right here. This is a double-sided sticky tape, but it's actually 30-pound tape. This tape is made to hold some stuff. And what we'll do is we need to cover the back of it with the tape. Now we'll use our blade. To cut and rip. And now we want to make sure that we have a good stick. Alright, so that mumba jumba is on there. So you know, there's motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, motor 4, and then all of our wires stay right here as short as possible. And that is so very important. So we added double spacers for one of the main reasons of taking the motor wires and being able to pass them under here more freely. And that way they can pop out the side just like this and come around and connect. Alright, so I'm going to take a little bit of flux from the pen. I'm going to get that hit. It'll be a little bit more acceptable to take the solder if it's got a little bit of flux on it. Alright, so taking a look at it now that we've flowed the solder, everything looks really, really good. It came out really well. I was a little bit worried that the 3D print would start to melt while I was soldering, and I'm sure it did. It probably heated up some, but not enough to have done anything. The solder actually flowed really well. We've got big, healthy bubbles. I've checked them. There's no cold solder. Everything flowed all the way through and looks really good. And the last thing that I'll do for these 3 wires is I'll go ahead and clean them up. So I'll take my toothbrush with a little bit of alcohol and I'll just give them a nice little clean. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's pretty damn close. Either way, I'm really happy with the way that it came out. And what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna hit the other 3 so you don't have to watch the same thing 3 times. And then I'll meet you guys back here. All right, pilots, we are back and I have got all 4 ESCs on. Not only are they on, they look freaking amazing. I've got my heat sinks, my capacitors, my ESCs. I've even got the 3D printed little casings that hold them there, ever so perfect. I mean, this freaking X-Class racing monster drone, 2.5 feet long, is just coming out perfect. I love the way it's coming together. The blue on the pink, I mean, it's just flowing together all nice. All right, take a look at what I did. Woo-hoo-hoo. Look at that. Let me show you some of these solder joints. I mean, look at the way that came out. Those right there just look perfect the way they're flowing. And then on the back side, oh no, that's the front. Look at the front. Man, that came out magnificent. Is that a good word? Look at that. Oh my goodness. You know, we're probably in, who knows, I've been at this for 9-10 hours now. This is not your everyday ordeal. This is, building an X-Class rig is next level stuff, man, and it is a lot of fun. I'm having a blast. So if I pop the hood, you can see our PDBs here. Our 4 ESCs are in. They are strong, they're secure. Motor wires look good. Motors are connected and on. All right, pilots, it has been fun, and we are done with part 2 of how to build a monster drone series. We are moving on to part 3. If you guys want to watch that, make sure that you click the suggested video. It might be up here somewhere. If not, go down in the video description, find it, and continue on with the build. I know you want to stick around to see this thing fly, so you better watch the next video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you on the next one.